You have 5 minutes to pack a bag and get out. The police officer did not care that I was wearing a black dress or that we had just buried my father an hour ago. He only cared about the paperwork in my sister Hannah's hand. A temporary restraining order. She told him I had threatened to kill her. Her voice trembled just enough to sell the lie. She claimed she did not feel safe with me in the house. It was complete fiction. But it was legally binding. I looked up at the second-floor window, searching for the one person who could stop this. My mother, Shannon, was standing there watching. She saw the police lights. She saw me standing in the driveway with nothing but my purse. She did not come down. She just reached out and closed the curtains. That was the moment I realized this was not a family dispute. It was a hostile takeover. The room at the Motel 6 smelled like lemon cleaner trying to cover up decades of bad decisions. I threw my purse on the bed. The mattress springs groaned. The only sound in the room besides the aggressive hum of the air conditioner. It was a long way from the velvet drapes and polished silver of Buckhead. But it had one advantage. It was quiet. And in my line of work, quiet is where you find the bodies. I sat at the wobbly desk and opened my laptop. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. Most people in my position, homeless, grieving, and legally exiled from their childhood home, would be falling apart right about now. They would be calling friends, sobbing into the phone, asking why. But I do not ask why. I ask how much and when. My name is Celine. I am 32 years old, and for the last decade, I have worked as a senior risk auditor for corporate mergers. My job is not about numbers. It is about patterns. I look at a company that claims to be profitable, and I find the one loose thread that unravels the fraud. I find the hidden debt. I find the lies buried in the footnotes. I do not feel the chaos. I document it. I opened a fresh spreadsheet. Column A, time. Column B, event. Column C, lie. 4:15 p.m. Officer Miller. Badge number 592. Enforce the restraining order based on a verbal claim of imminent threat. No evidence provided. 4:20 p.m. Hannah claims I own a firearm. False. I have never owned a gun. 4:22 p.m. Shannon closes the curtains. I typed it all out, turning the trauma into data. As the list grew, the pattern emerged. It was sloppy. It was desperate. Hannah had not just evicted me. She had nuked the site. She had used a nuclear option to solve a minor problem. That was not a power move. That was a panic move. I leaned back in the cheap chair and stared at the cursor blinking on the screen. Why go this far? She already had Mom in her pocket. She clearly had the will in her favor. Or she would not be this bold. Why risk a felony charge for filing a false police report just to get me out of the house 24 hours early? Then it hit me. The realization washed over me. Cold and clarifying. Hannah is not cruel because she is strong. She is cruel because she is terrified. She knows exactly who she is. She is a 29-year-old socialite with no career, no skills, and a personality built entirely on the approval of people she hates. She treats inheritance like a blood sport because without the money and the Caldwell name, she is nothing but a hollow shell in a designer dress. She does not hate me because I am the half-sister or the mistake. She hates me because I survived without the validation she craves like oxygen. She hates me because every time she looks at me, she sees the one thing she can never buy. Competence. She threw me out because she knows that if I stayed in that house for even one more day, if I got a look at the papers on Dad's desk, I would see through her. She had to remove the auditor before I could open the books. I looked at the spreadsheet again. The fear in her actions was palpable in every line. She thought she was displaying dominance. She was actually displaying her neck. I saved the file. I named it The Ledger. Hannah thought she had won the war because she held the castle. She forgot that the castle is just a building. The war is fought in the paperwork. And she had just handed me the first piece of ammunition. The silence in the motel room pressed against my ears, reminding me of the only other place I had ever felt safe. My father's study. Growing up, the Blackwood estate was divided into two distinct territories. The rest of the house belonged to Shannon and Hannah. It was a zone of performative happiness, endless renovations, and the cloying scent of gardenias. They treated life like a photo shoot. If it did not look expensive, it did not exist. They spent their days shopping for validation, and their nights complaining that it was not enough. But the study belonged to James. It smelled of stale cigar smoke and old leather binding. It was a fortress. And I was the only one allowed inside the gates. My father was not a warm man. He did not hug. He did not offer comfort. He offered data. When I was 10, while Hannah was learning tap dance to impress the neighbors, Dad was teaching me how to read a corporate ledger. He taught me that numbers were the only language that did not lie. People lie, Celine, he told me once, circling a discrepancy in red ink. Emotions lie. But the math always balances eventually. He saw us clearly. He looked at Hannah and saw a liability, someone who consumed value without creating it. He looked at Shannon and saw a sunk cost. But when he looked at me, he saw a safeguard. 6 months ago, right after the diagnosis, he called me into that study. The cancer was already eating him alive, shrinking him inside his expensive suit. But his eyes were sharp. He did not talk about his funeral. He did not talk about saying goodbye. He talked about the war that was coming. They are going to come for you, he said. His voice was a dry rasp, but the words were heavy as lead. As soon as I am in the ground, they will try to strip the meat from the bone. They think the money is magic. They think it just appears. I sat across from him, watching his hands tremble as he poured a scotch he was not supposed to drink. I cannot stop them from being greedy, he continued. But I can stop them from winning. I have built a wall, Celine. But you have to be the one to man the gate. You are the only one who knows how the lock works. He slid a heavy file across the mahogany desk. He did not tell me to open it then. He told me to wait until the first shot was fired. Don't fight them with noise, he warned me. Fight them with the truth. It is the one thing they are allergic to. I closed my laptop in the motel room. The memory settled over me, replacing the panic with cold purpose. Hannah thought she was fighting a jealous sister. She thought this was a scramble for a slice of the pie. She did not realize that James had not just left me money. He had left me a mission. I was not stealing the inheritance. I was the security system he installed to keep the parasites out. 2 weeks later, the war moved from the driveway to the courtroom. It was not a skirmish anymore. It was a full-scale assault. I was sitting in a rented office space downtown, a temporary headquarters funded by my savings, when the process server arrived. He did not look like a villain. He looked like a bored college student in a windbreaker. He handed me a thick envelope, mumbled a name, and walked away before I could even sign. I opened the envelope. The header at the top read, Superior Court of Fulton County. Plaintiff, Hannah Blackwood. Defendant, Celine Blackwood. The charges were staggering. Hannah was not just contesting the will, she was trying to erase me. The lawsuit accused me of elder abuse, undue influence, and fraudulent conversion. The narrative she spun was a masterpiece of fiction. I was the manipulative spinster who had preyed on a dying man's confusion, isolating him from his beloved family, to rewrite his legacy. But the legal filing was just the artillery. The real damage was being done on the ground. My phone buzzed with a notification from my bank. Account frozen. Legal hold. I tried to log in. Locked. Every cent I had access to, my savings, my checking. Even the small joint account Dad had set up for emergencies was frozen pending litigation. $6.5 million of assets were now ice. I had enough cash in my purse for maybe 2 weeks of motel bills. After that, I was destitute. Then came the social isolation. My phone lit up with a text from Shannon. It was not an apology. It was a command. Just sign the rights over, Celine. Stop this embarrassment. We can end this today if you just walk away. Don't make us ruin you. I did not reply. I just stared at the screen, watching the little bubble appear and disappear as she typed more threats she did not have the guts to send. The rumors started filtering back to me through the few friends who had not blocked me yet. Hannah was telling everyone at the club that I was an illegitimate child, a genetic fraud that James had pitied but never truly claimed. She was attacking my identity to strip me of my credibility. If I was not really a Blackwood, then I was just a grifter. The pressure was physical. It sat on my chest like an anvil. They had the house. They had the money. They had the social standing. All I had was a laptop, a frozen bank account, and a folder of evidence that nobody had seen yet. I looked at the lawsuit again. Paragraph 14 claimed James was mentally incapacitated when he signed the trust. I remembered the nights we spent playing chess 3 weeks before he died. I remembered him correcting my math on a tax return 2 days before the end. He was not incapacitated. He was the sharpest person in that house, until his final breath. Hannah was banking on me breaking. She thought if she squeezed hard enough, I would panic and sign whatever settlement she offered just to make the pain stop. She did not know I was already auditing her strategy. She had made a critical error. By claiming undue influence, she had opened the door for me to prove James's intent. And once that door was open, I could walk right through it with the one thing she could not bribe: the truth. The office of Sterling and Vance felt like a library, where sound went to die. Thick carpets, mahogany walls, and the distinct silence that costs $400 an hour. I sat across from Arthur Vance, the estate attorney my father had trusted for 30 years. He looked tired. He pushed a heavy binder across the desk toward me. The trust is solid, Celine, he said, tapping the leather cover. But Hannah's lawsuit is clever. She is not attacking the document directly. She is attacking the capacity of the man who signed it. If she convinces a judge that James was incompetent, the whole trust dissolves. We go back to intestate laws. And as the surviving spouse, Shannon gets everything. I opened the binder. I was not looking for the standard clauses. I was looking for the landmine my father had promised me. Dad knew this was coming, I said. He told me he left a safeguard. Vance nodded slowly. He flipped to page 42, paragraph 9. It was bolded. The gift over provision, he said. I read the text. It was brutal in its simplicity. In the event that any beneficiary challenges the validity of this trust based on the paternity, bloodline, or biological status of another beneficiary, said challenging beneficiary shall immediately forfeit their entire inheritance. It is a poison pill, Vance explained. James knew Hannah was obsessed with bloodlines. He knew she hated that you were his daughter by choice, not biology. So he rigged the game. If she attacks your blood, she loses her money. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. The smoking gun. Then we win, I said. She has been telling everyone in town I am a fraud. She evicted me because I am not real family. Vance held up a hand. That is the problem. She is saying it in town. She is whispering it at the country club. But look at the lawsuit. He slid the legal complaint over to me. I scanned the pages. Undue influence. Coercion. Mental incapacity. She is smart. Or her lawyer is, Vance said grimly. Nowhere in this filing does she mention biology. She is keeping her argument strictly on your father's mental state. As long as she stays in that lane, the gift over clause stays dormant. She can drag this out for years, drain the estate with legal fees, and force you to settle just to stop the bleeding. I stared at the paper. Hannah was playing a double game. In public, she was destroying my reputation with blood slurs. In court, she was playing the concerned daughter protecting a senile father. She was walking a tightrope, and she was doing it perfectly. To trigger the clause, Vance said, we need her to say it on the record. We need her to admit, under oath, that her motivation is blood. If she does that, she triggers the forfeiture. And if she forfeits? I asked. Where does her share go? To me? Vance smiled for the first time. No. James knew that would give her a reason to keep fighting you. If she forfeits, her share bypasses you completely. It goes to the Atlanta Second Chance Dog Rescue. I almost laughed. My father hated waste, but he loved dogs. He had set it up so that if Hannah got greedy, she would not just lose to her rival. She would lose to a kennel of stray pit bulls. It was the ultimate insult to her vanity, but the trap was not sprung yet. Hannah was safe as long as she kept her mouth shut about biology. I closed the binder. So we have a loaded gun, I said. But she is standing behind bulletproof glass. Essentially, Vance said. Unless she makes a mistake. I looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. Hannah did not make mistakes when she was winning. She made mistakes when she was insulted. She made mistakes when she thought she was being cheated. She will not make a mistake, I said, standing up. I have to push her into one. The room at the motel was quiet again, but my mind was loud. Vance's words echoed in my head. Unless she makes a mistake. I sat on the edge of the bed, the laptop glowing in the dim light. Hannah was careful. She had lawyers, she had Shannon, and she had the terrifying confidence of someone who has never been told no. She would not slip up in a courtroom. She would not accidentally confess. I pretended to surrender. I drafted an email to Hannah's lawyer offering to walk away from the estate in exchange for $50,000, just enough to start over. I wrote it like a defeated woman. Exhausted, humiliated, desperate. Then I sent it. The goal was never the money. It was to make her overreach. Hannah didn't want a quiet win, she wanted to humiliate me publicly. 2 hours later, my attorney called. She had rejected the deal, accused me of hiding cash, and demanded a forensic audit and deposition. Perfect. I told him to accept. At the deposition, Hannah played the devoted daughter, while Vance calmly pressed her about father's mental state. Then he asked the wrong question. The one she couldn't resist. She exploded. On camera, under oath, she screamed that I wasn't really his child and didn't deserve a cent. That was the trap. Vance immediately introduced the trust clause Hannah had just triggered. By attacking my bloodline, she had forfeited her entire inheritance, roughly $3 million to charity. Her lawyers packed up without a word. By nightfall, liens were filed, locks were changed, and Hannah was evicted from the mansion she thought she owned. I drove past my mother without stopping, blocked her number, and went to my father's grave. He hadn't just left me money, he left me dignity. And to anyone who feels invisible in their own family, stop begging to be chosen. Choose yourself, walk away, and don't look back.